Stamina, noun. In my opinion, one of the most slept-on concepts in the English vocabulary, defined by Merriam-Webster as the moral or emotional strength to continue with a difficult process, effort, etc. Staying power. Maybe this is not the first definition that comes to mind for you when you think of stamina. Maybe it conjures up an image of a long-distance runner or another athlete. But what if thinking more expansively about stamina could help us reframe failure? I believe that I'm here to make a case, actually, for why listening to the stories of others in their struggles and their difficulties and their failures can act as fuel for our stamina, our collective moral and emotional staying power. If individuals could do the work to go through and examine the places where we have had missteps or errors in our lives, enough to make peace with them, it would not only allow us to put regret to rest, but would allow us to access the learning in those experiences. And from that place, we could power up our failures as sharing opportunities for the benefit of others. We might call these sharing opportunities our failure stories. I choose to call them stamina stories. Stamina stories can shorten the learning curve for others and give them access to wisdom that they can pull on when they come across times of challenge to show them how to navigate. Ultimately, the courage, the power, and the transparency in this process can help fuel the community forward. Growing up, I heard all kinds of stories of African Americans prevailing in spite of, and what that did was build in me a love not only of our resilience, but the stamina written into the human story. I believe that all of us carry with us the narratives of others as a sort of mental library or a template for what is possible. When we remember the hard things that others have gone through and made it through, it gives us a way to figure out how we might deal with adversity. But what happens when people stop talking about failures? You know, our culture is so good at showing the best of what our lives offer. We put our mountaintops on display and we hide our valleys. Our young people learn that life is about flexing successes. All we do is win, is what they hear. But this is countercultural to the collective wisdom of the village around failure. If young people have the opportunity to hear from people, adults, in places where we've made missteps and failures, they can use that for their benefit. But if they don't have access to that information, what do they do when they encounter failures? So I would propose that we bring ourselves to the place where we are fully able to share our stamina stories with our young people. Sports can give us an can instruct us in this area. You'll hear athletes talk about the failures and also the successes in a game or in a series, and they always talk about the next. And so because failure is attached to learning, there's hope embedded there. And that's what I want for every young person every day. So I'd like to share a stamina story with you. I have always been a word girl. When I was a child, I wrote stories and poems and books. I thrived in writing contests. When I spoke or wrote, people were listening and encouraging me. I knew I was a writer. But I was also a pleaser, a perfectionist. I wanted to get everything right, to make my parents proud, and to prove wrong the stereotypes about who I was supposed to be because of the skin I showed up in the world. So when my time came to choose a major for college, I put the power in the hands of those I trusted more than I trusted myself: counselors, teachers, my parents, peers. What I would have done was majored in English if I had known that it would not mean that I'd be a starving artist for the rest of my life. What I did was I put my power, as I said, into the hands of all of those who I trusted more than myself, and I ended up choosing a major that didn't do much for me. I majored in business, marketing. It was a strong major, something I could believe in and people would be proud of me. However, what I really loved was English literature. I watched my best friend, who was an English major. She talked to me about studying Toni Morrison and Geoffrey Chaucer, William Shakespeare, James Baldwin. I loved literature, and at the same time, I wouldn't let myself love it. Have you ever known you were meant for something that you didn't let yourself love? So I did everything that I was told to do. I graduated with a degree in marketing, but I never got the training that my heart really longed for. So in the end, I was degreed, but I had failed my heart and my art. All was not lost because I learned towards the end of college that I was a natural teacher. So I returned to school to become degreed and certified to teach. And 21 years later, I've enjoyed a rich and fulfilling experience as an educator. However, there's a part of me that's not satisfied and not fulfilled because I'm also a writer who never pursued the writing life. Have you ever had the experience where you wonder if your chance to show up as the best version of yourself in the world, to be your glorious self in all of its manifestation, has passed you by? I've had that experience. I started to wonder if maybe my opportunity had missed me. Maybe I'd missed it, and it would never come again. So I decided that I needed to pursue the path of writing to publish. I started to submit my writing and to enter contests and so forth. And then I started also collecting rejections, a lot of them. Between August 2016 and now, I've collected 28 of them. And after a while of this process, my confidence started to wane, and this kind of quiet devastation set in. It started to hurt too much to want this dream. I'd already failed once in this, and here I was continually failing again. So I told myself I didn't care about it, and I put my attention on other things. But when you are made for something, you can't escape it. It comes knocking, it comes whispering, it chases you. And mine began to whisper to me, "You are a writer." And after a while, the potential pain of regret began to outweigh the pain of rejection. So I picked up the pen again. Fast forward to 2020, I published my first piece in a national children's magazine. I have a poem in the queue for publication now. I've performed at our local arts festival with some of my poetry, and I've also received an arts grant. I've received scholarships to study children's literature, and in the next few months, my first picture book will independently publish. I'm on the path, y'all. I am confident that the next step will be to find that just right literary major and traditionally publish. But no matter what comes next, I will know I have won if my children remember this journey. What I want for them is that when they encounter hard odds, I want them to remember their mama's stamina story and keep pushing. So let's talk about the anatomy of a stamina story. First comes the courage. It takes an incredible amount of self-awareness to tell a stamina story to yourself. And this was the most powerful and pivotal part for me. It was where I swallowed the lump in my throat and admitted to myself, that disappointed me, that hurt. Now this is the part where you wrestle, you grapple, you contend with the facts of your experience. And then you put the wrestling to rest. You make peace with it. And from that place, you're able to share. So what might you share in a stamina story? One is the problem. In my situation, it was when I chose the wrong major and racked up rejections as a writer. Two is the turning point, your decision. This was when I made the choice that no matter what, I was going to have to pursue this because it wouldn't happen for me unless I did it. And number three is the wisdom. What did you learn from it? What I learned is that it's not about the big, shiny outcome. It's about the process and being true to yourself. So what are some ways that you might put your stamina story out in the world? One is sit and talk with someone one-on-one. This could be a family member, a friend, or in the model of the human library, a stranger. Number two, if you're a teacher or part of an organization, you can invite people in to speak on topics of resilience. Number three, and this is a project I personally want to work on, what if we had an online repository where we curated stamina stories to use as teaching tools? This would be the wisdom of the village collected for public good. I could imagine them being used by teachers and students as they study growth mindset, by parents and children as they're studying the family tree, and by organizations of all stripes as they work to build cultures of trust and safety. In all of these ways and more, you and I have the power to be part of someone's mental script where they pull on our stories to help them through their challenges and help them to triumph through. So we talked earlier about the little girl who loved to write. I know now that she was absolutely on the right path. And when I talk to her in the mirror today, this is what I tell her. I let her know that I'm proud of her for having the courage to take risks. I tell her that I believe in her and I'm thankful that she was able to learn to own her power and her experience. And I salute her for loving others enough, for being willing to share her stamina stories in spaces where it's wise to. I encourage you to do the same. I guarantee you there are some young people in your life who need to hear that we collectively can make it. How do we know? We have evidence that we can. Our stamina stories tell us so. Thank you.